There's lots of great mage guides that you can learn from and start your mage journey with. That is if you're still living in fall of 2022. The fact is, almost all of these guides are either outdated or blatantly wrong. So ya boy is making you guys an updated 2024 Dungeons Mage guide, which floor you should actually be focusing on. So I've set up this chart that you can look at to see which floor you should do. Okay, starting off with floor 1, we are going to be using non-dungeonized Wise Dragon armor. You can either choose between the Wise Dragon helmet and the Shadow goggles. You can choose between an epic blue whale and an epic sheep pet. You want everything to be necrotic, except for maybe the chest plate, which you could put loving on. However, that requires mining 21. Some people don't have that at this stage in the game. You're going to be using a heroic bonzo staff as a weapon. Your power stone is going to be the ender monocle, sighted power. And for the utilities, you should have a wand of mending, florid zombie sword, and radiant power orb. This will total at around 12.9 million coins. A pretty hefty price tag for this stage in the game, but it is what it is. In terms of the boss, there's really nothing special. You just shoot him until he dies. The gear for floor 2 is almost exactly the same, except you're going to want to have loving on that chest plate of yours because you should, by this point, definitely have mining 21. Scarf is very similar to Bonzo in the sense that there's 2 stages. The first stage is much more chill and lets his goons do all the work. And then the second stage, he goes ham on you. And this is the place where most players die. The only real strategy to this floor is that you have to kill the priest first because it's able to revive its fellow goons. Okay, now floor 3, we're going to be seeing much different gear than floor 2. Instead of Wise Dragon armor and dark goggles, you'll be using adaptive armor since it's dungeon armor with low requirements and it gives you a lot more health and defense than the Wise Dragon armor does. Instead of the Bonzo staff, you'll be using a frozen scythe. Make sure to reforge it to heroic as well. And the final change is instead of the Wand of Mending, you'll want to upgrade to the Wand of Restoration. This, in total, will cost about 14 million coins, pretty much the same price as earlier. This boss room, unlike Bonzo and Scarf, has 3 phases. The first phase where you're supposed to kill all of the Guardians. The second phase where you're supposed to get the Professor low. And the third phase where the Professor fuses with all of the Guardians and you're supposed to kill him. So for the first phase, the strategy is to get all of the Guardians as low as possible so you can kill them all at the same time without them being able to respawn. For the second phase, you just shoot him. And the third phase, you just shoot him again. Good. Floor 4. We're starting to get into more of the mid-game floors. We're going to be seeing Wise Dragon armor again, except this time it's going to be dungeonized. We're going to be getting a new, much more expensive weapon, the Spirit Scepter. However, you want to upgrade your Radiant Power Orb to a Mana Flux, and your Sheep Pet should be legendary. Not the Blue Whale yet if you're going with the Blue Whale route, because that's a bit more expensive. And this will total at around 32 million coins, significantly more expensive than the previous setups. Floor 4 boss. This is an interesting one. Floor 4 is much more strategy based than any of the other floors we've seen yet. The boss fight is complicated, but I'm going to sum it up for you. Thorn summons a bunch of spirit animals, and you have to do a certain amount of damage to them to summon a spirit bear. The spirit bear has 5 million health and hits like a truck. It won't be easy to take down. But once you do, it will drop the spirit bow. The only weapon in the game that is able to damage Thorn. You have to shoot Thorn with this bow 4 times to kill Thorn. The aiming is a bit tough, so if you have an archer in your party, you should let them shoot the bow. However, if you don't, and you're the one that has to shoot, here's some tips. Aim it farther in front and farther up from Thorn than you normally would, and just adjust to your mistakes. As the run goes on, Thorn summons more and more spirit animals, so the faster you kill Thorn, the better. Also, it is your job to reduce the crowding with your AoE damage. This floor is reliably profitable since it has the highest recombobulator chance of any of the floors outside of Master Mode, and you don't need to get some kind of 1 in 500 drop to make money. Floor 5. we're starting to get into more of the advanced floors. The gear from floor 5 is going to be very similar to the floor 4 gear, but we have a few upgrades to make. First off, you're going to want to upgrade your Wand of Restoration to a Wand of Atonement. If you're using the Blue Whale route, you're going to want to upgrade your Epic Blue Whale to a Legendary. And probably the most significant upgrade, you're going to want to upgrade your Dark Goggles to Shadow Goggles. This will total at around 38 million coins, so pretty much the same price as the floor 4 setup. I'm just going to warn you guys right now, this boss fight is very much not suited towards Mage class. It requires you to have high DPS towards one or few targets, which Mage simply does not have. What I would recommend for this floor is to run around and try to damage as many of the livids as possible, because trying to separate one of the livids from the rest is going to prove a nightmare, and you will spend 90% of the time searching and separating instead of actually doing damage. You should let your higher single targeting damage teammates focus on killing the correct livid while you just wither away at all of their health to make it easier for them. This is the first late game floor. You can see here that the gear is looking very different. We've removed the Blue Whale because your party should have a tank for floor 6. You're still going to be using Sighted Power and a Legendary Sheep, but you're going to want to upgrade your Mana Flux Power Orb to an Overflux. You're going to notice that the weapons look a bit different. For the clear, you're going to still be using a Spirit Scepter, but you're going to want to have a higher damaging weapon for mini bosses and the boss fight, which I've selected the Yeti Sword and the Midas Staff, typically the two most popular options for this floor. And you can already see that the armor is looking very different as well. Instead of Wise Dragon armor, you're going to be using 3/4 Necromancer Lord armor with Wither Goggles. And this in total is going to cost 330 million coins, roughly. Now, this could be significantly more or less expensive depending on which weapon you choose, but it is still significantly more expensive than all of the previous floors. Floor 6 boss is fortunately much less chaotic than the previous two floors. It's also much simpler. So, as soon as you enter the boss room, make your way to the middle as quickly as possible and place down your Overflux. If you're using the Yeti Sword for boss, then look down and go into F3 third person and just hold right click. If you're using the Midas Staff, then back up a little bit and shoot the Midas Staff so it hits the terracottas. You're not going to be all that useful for the giants if you have a Yeti Sword, but the Midas Staff will work a bit better for the giants. You really shouldn't have much trouble surviving, because you should have a tank in your party at this point in the game. Floor 7, the peak in Mage achievement. Just like floor 6, we have a ton of gear upgrades to go over. First things first, you're going to be using a Suspicious Hyperion as your weapon. You're going to be upgrading your Overflux Power Orb to a Plasma Flux, and you can see the armor is looking very different too. For boss, you're going to be wanting to use 3/4 Storm with Wither Goggles, and for the clear, you're going to want to have ideally Maxer Boots, 2/4 Storm, and Wither Goggles, and this will total at about 2.65 billion coins. Floor 7 boss is the most complicated boss fight in all of Dungeons, and possibly even all of Skyblock. The first thing you're going to want to do is actually before you go into the portal. You want to put on a rabbit hat, and then once you get into the portal, you swap back to your Wither Goggles. This is going to give you a permanent high-level jump boost that will be incredibly helpful throughout the entire boss fight, especially in Goldor. As soon as you enter the portal, you are going to be in Maxer's room. You are going to need to take crystals from 2 pillars and place them down to the ledges that are lower down. There are 2 most popular methods. The Jerry Sheen Gun method, where you launch yourself up the wall with a Jerry Sheen Gun, or the Bonzo Staff method, where you climb up the lava and shoot yourself up onto the ledge, and then shoot behind you to knock yourself back and onto the pillar. The Bonzo Staff method is by far the easiest one because it doesn't require nearly as much aim and it doesn't use as much mana. Once you get the crystals, you're going to want to lead Maxer into the beam where he can then be damaged. If you have a tank in your party, they'll take care of this for you, but if they don't, then you're out of luck because it's going to be your job. Once you drop into the floor, you're going to be in Storm's domain. This floor is slightly more complicated than Maxer, with a lot of deadly features, but the first thing you want to do is start killing as many of the wither skeletons as possible before the lightning rains down. When you see numbers on the screen and it hits 0, the lightning rains down, you want to go under a pillar before the timer hits 0, or else you will probably die. In terms of actually beating the room, your tank is going to aggro Storm and get Storm underneath a pillar. You and your higher damaging teammates are going to need to step on the color coordinated pad to crush Storm. Once Storm is crushed, he'll be able to be damaged, and you and your teammates are going to have to deal as much damage as possible. And you'll have to do this a few times before Storm dies and you're able to go on to the next part of the boss. Okay, so this is probably the most complicated part of the entire boss fight. Goldor and the terminals. Once you step onto the red crush pad, you are going to be launched down into Goldor's terminal room, where you are going to have to run a semi-parkour course. This is where the jump boost is going to come in handy, and use your Bonzo staff to jump around and complete the terminals, which are essentially mini games. There are a lot of different types of terminals. There are some where you have to sort items, some where you have to flick a series of levers. There's a lot of different kinds of terminals, but each one provides a description on how to do them. Once you complete the terminal, you move on to the next one, but the entire time, Goldor is going to be chasing you. You need to complete all of the terminals to make it to the gate, and the gate will open, and you can continue on to the next section, and there is 4 total sections. Once you beat the 4th section, you go into a room where Goldor is cornering you, and you have to kill him before he kills you. And luckily for everyone here, this next part of the boss is the easiest part. Just don't die and shoot Necron until he dies. Master Mode. This is a big thing because it's going to be changing up your playstyle. RCM and the Hyperion are no longer as goated as they were in the Catacombs. You're going to have to implement a second playstyle, LCM. I'm sure that most of you guys know what LCM is, but just in case some of you haven't, LCM stands for Left Click Mage. Get this. You play Mage class, and you left click. Groundbreaking stuff. Just like floor 6 and 7, we got a lot of gear upgrades to go over. First off, you're going to be wanting to switch up your Hyperion to an Estrella because the mobs here are going to be doing so much damage that you're going to have to if you don't want to die. And your LCM weapon is going to be the good old giant sword. And LCM had gotten a big buff from the recent updates. This is going to be especially good. And you're going to want to reforge the giant sword to Fabled. Just like the weapons, there's going to be 2 different armor sets for RCM and LCM. It is especially important that you're going fast so you're not slowing down your team with getting any of the rooms. So for your RCM set, you're going to have 3/4 Maxer and Wither Goggles. But your LCM set is going to be full Storm with all necrotic, because ability damage does not affect LCM at all. And more stuff, we finally have a new Power Stone. We are going to be using Bizarre Power just because of the sheer amount of intelligence that it gives over everything else. For the pets, you're going to be wanting to use a mythic golden dragon. Yup, fancy stuff. You're also going to want to have 1 billion coins in the bank to optimize its power. And the miscellaneous items are going to be very similar from before. Good old Florid Zombie Sword and Plasma Flux Power Orb. But the elephant in the room, the only thing that makes Mage class even playable in Master Mode, the Ice Spray Wand. Especially helpful for mini bosses, as it freezes mobs in place temporarily and makes them more prone to damage. This is going to total about 3.7 billion coins, which is very similar to floor 7 cost, not too much more expensive at all. And for late Master Mode, you're going to use a Claymore. See ya!